Welcome to Power Movers, the podcast where we empower business owners and entrepreneurs to reclaim their time, master their systems, and live the life they love. From leveraging AI to implementing business operating systems that bring clarity and focus, to exploring the transformative power of wellness practices like breathwork, meditation, and cold exposure, we cover it all. We'll dive into the tough conversations about mental health, share practical tools to help you harness the power of your mind and your body so you can feel better, perform better, and achieve more. Join me, Roy, as we uncover strategies, share inspiring stories, and explore the tools that will help you move your business and your life to the next level. I'm here with Simon Bowden, somebody who's inspired me a lot over the last couple of years. I first met Simon in an ice bath. So he came to a workshop that I was running with his daughter Carmen, and they both got into the ice bath, and they really engaged with it, as painful and scary as it was the first time. Then we became really good friends. Simon comes around and we do ice baths at my place for quite a while. But let's just start with who is Simon now? Let's start there. Tell me, Simon. Give me a little bit of a very checkered who you are now, and then we'll start digging into some of your awesome things. Simon's done military in South Africa. He's travelled all around the world, doing various projects, and other projects in Africa. He's moved through different states in the East. He's worked in the UK for many years. He's been in everything from IT to fixing roofs. So really quite a journey. And you're now Simon, 68, 69 years old.
Yeah, 68, 69 this year. Yeah.
And that as well has given him some real insight into how there's this ageism thing that really does exist, and we'll touch on that a bit later as well.
Sure.
So, Simon, tell us a little bit about where you are now, and then we'll dive back in.
Okay. I mean, I guess, do you want to start from kind of coming out of school, a brief trajectory to where I am, or?
Yeah, go for it. Yeah. Let's
Okay.
go there.
I guess there's a couple of fairly distinct chapters that have some interesting transition points within them, if you like. I guess my first 10 years was a mixture of surveying, geological exploration. I was into mining exploration and building roads and essentially moving around Southern Africa and doing what every young guy should do. Go and play in the really deep bush and just have a huge amount of fun. And I wouldn't have understood it at the time, but that was really so massively influential on my later years, because some of that early work, I mean, I was working in real Africa. My first job was in Botswana. And when I say real Africa, kind of dictated by being north of the quarantine fence. And the quarantine fence is what separates where domestic cattle and buffalo. Buffalo carry tuberculosis, and you have to quarantine domestic cattle from them. But once you're across the fence, you're in real Africa, where the big five roam free. You're not in a game reserve, you're just in Africa. And that kind of sharpens your focus, because things eat you out there.
So everything wants to kill you.
As a 17-year-old kid, you kind of grow up quite quickly out there, and
because you were in the military first, weren't you?
No. I came out of school. My intake, we were conscript back then, and our schooling system, as you will remember, ends at the end of the year, and my military intake was not until July. So I had 6 months to kill. So I went off to Botswana on the back of a truck, as you do as a 16, 17-year-old kid.
How did you find that job? How did that come about?
That was a mate of mine, a very good friend of mine. His dad ran a surveying company called Route Construction Surveys. I still remember it. He was a fascinating guy. I mean, he used to really intrigue me, because every time this guy arrived back at my friend's house, which would be periodically every 3 or 4 months or so. He would arrive with this convoy of Land Rovers and filthy, wild-looking trucks and long hair and guys with big beards and these really rough dudes. And they would arrive off of a project somewhere and doing something wild. And I thought it looked like a really cool job. And his kids were not interested. And I said, "Hey, man, I would like to work for you." And he was, "Yeah, okay. You know,
Back in
when
the
you
day,
when
when
you're done with your
things were
school,
real. Huh?
we'll take you." You know. And I
Wow.
mean, we're talking back in the day as an apprenticeship. I mean, I earned, I think, 150 Rand a month, which coming out of school wasn't, didn't make any difference to me because I got meals. Accommodation was a tent and a stretcher. And I didn't realize when I signed up that when you go deep bush, you work 7 days a week, because what is a weekend when you're in the bush? Okay.
Yeah.
Doesn't exist. And you work, I didn't know, but when you work in survey, you get up when it's dark and you don't finish work until it's dark because you need the first light and the last light. It's the most important times of the day for surveying. So you're on site at first light, which means you get up way before that. So I learned, if you like, as an apprenticeship, to work 14-hour, 15-hour days from day one. I thought that was normal. Yeah.
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 Wow.
Anyway, I guess, coming out of that, my first team lead role was at 17, and I learned a very interesting lesson. When your team are what people today would call primal, essentially illiterate, unskilled, rough guys that are bush born and bred.
Yeah.
And you cannot command or demand respect from people like that. You earn it.
You earn it. 100%.
You earn it.
Yeah.
And it's something
what an amazing lesson to get so young, right?
beautiful,
Yeah,
man.
it just sits with you your whole life,
You
and
never forget it.
yeah, and
Never forget it.
I had the similar, well, not the similar experience, but I had a similar experience where I was thrust into a management role very young. I had 35 African ladies working with me in a packing shed. They were packing mushrooms for the supermarkets, and I'd get there again also at 3 in the morning because mushrooms didn't care for your schedule, and we'd get in and the first thing I would try to do when I got there, I'm always trying to fix things, and I was trying to make their lives easier. And there wasn't any. I didn't have any. I wasn't asking them for too much. I never shouted. I never. Because that's just not my character. And so quickly, they came around to see that I was trying to help them and trying to kind of support them and trying to make their lives easier. And to me, that was a real powerful way to earn respect, to show that you cared.
Yeah.
To find out about their families, and I was invited to weddings, and I just learned so much about the culture, which was I'd get there in the morning, and these amazing ladies would just start singing as only the Africans can,
Yeah.
and they'd just harmonize and they'd sing backwards and forth. And I learned Zulu very quickly. I learned to speak Zulu in a short amount of time. And that again was another way. I want to communicate with you at your level and on your language. It was just I realized afterwards, a powerful way to actually gain people's respect, to want to know more about them. So. Yeah, and you're out in the bush, eh?
I mean, I again at the time I didn't know what a project was, but I had my first real lesson in project management.
Okay.
I've been on site for, I don't know, 2 or 3 weeks maybe, and we were in our first camp on the Shashi River, and we had survived the first flash flood of the Shashi coming down. And we got up in the morning, and I mean, we were 8 teams. We had about 80 Africans on site, 7 or 8 per team. And we got up in the morning, as we all did, got with the campfire, everything going, everyone getting ready to roll. And he pulled me one side, the boss man pulled me one side, or Colin, and he said to me, "You are staying here today with your team." I said, "Why?" And he said, "I have a job for you. And you're going to drop the camp. You're going to move it 100 kilometers up the road. You're going to set the camp up. And when we finish tonight, we will find you."
Now just
You know,
just paint this picture a little bit, Simon, because people, yeah, that are listening probably can't even comprehend the magnitude of this for a 17-year. I mean, you're in the bush, right? Yeah, there's literally lions and yeah, all sorts of wildlife. Yeah,
yeah,
yeah. There's poisonous snakes everywhere.
there's
There's
everything.
it's just pure raw nature. Yeah, and
Yeah.
here you are, 17-year-old. Yeah, and you've been given this task of getting 100 kilometers up the road. There's no road, right?
There's a road.
Oh, there's a road,
There's a little sand road, little sand track. Yeah. And
yeah,
when I said to him, "Can you be a little more specific? Yeah, 100 k's out. Where exactly is the campsite?" And he said to me, "Find me a good campsite." And he squeezed it at me, "Don't fuck it up." And he jumped in his truck, and they all left. Truck it off.
yeah.
So
Yeah.
we did.
And you grow up fast, huh? You grow up super fast. You're given, yeah, because you're
Yeah.
given responsibility, right?
I moved the
Yeah.
camp, and when he came back, he was, "That's not bad. You could have done a few things different, but for your first decent sized campsite, that's not bad."
Amazing, amazing. And then just in that, there's lessons, right?
Yeah,
Micromanagement doesn't work.
no, exactly that. Empower your people.
Yeah,
Yeah, exactly
very
that.
people.
Empower your people.
Amazing. So
Yeah,
you're in the bush in Africa, and you're now, yeah, you decide to stop doing that. You go into the military, and just paint the picture of the military in South Africa because we had conscription. Yeah, I was called in as well. You're obviously older than I am, yeah, by a couple of years, not too much. Yeah, and not in mind, only in body. Well, yeah. So, what did that look like, and how formative was the military experience? I mean,
so
we
yeah,
we all dreaded going to the military.
so back in the day in South Africa, as you all probably remember, we had two primary languages before the current 11, and you had English and Afrikaans. And the military, when you arrive on day one, and of course I'm from the English side. I'm actually English born, funny enough. uh, so I was in that army as a volunteer, which is a story for later on. But on day one, when you arrive, they tell you we are totally bilingual. We heeltemal tweetalig over here, and that's the last word of English you hear. Yeah, but of course I'm a bit of a rebel, so I arrived into the military with hair down here. I've been in the bush for 6 months,
Yeah.
not had a haircut. I mean, I arrived with hair way past my shoulders, filthy. I was actually really filthy. I'd been hitchhiking around Rhodesia for a few weeks before I actually went in, and we'd arrived back in Johannesburg the night before I was due to clock in. Got blind drunk, so I arrived at the drill hall in Johannesburg, hungover. I stank. I was dirty. I had really long hair, and the Afrikaans boys,
They must have
they
seen you
did not
coming.
like it at all. So when I arrived, they kind of flagged me as a troublemaker. They in fact advised me to put all my drugs down. They said, "You clearly are a drug addict. We'd like you to be very clear, no drugs allowed. So can empty your pockets, put all your drugs over here." And I said, "I don't have any drugs." And they said, "This is your last warning." Anyway, cut a long story. This was in July, and which July in that part of the world is midwinter. So when we did get down to Kroonstad, they took me to the front of the line. They shaved half of my hair, bald.
Okay.
They left the other half long, and they sent me to the back of the queue. And we didn't get uniforms for 3 days. But on the second morning, with my half a haircut, we were out on the parade ground, and the captain came out and took one look at me, and as filthy dirty as I was, and he sent me in to go and scrub my kit. And I said, I haven't got any other kit. And he said, that's not my problem. You come to my army like that, you're not standing on my parade ground looking like that, go clean. So everybody got to stand in the freezing cold and wait for me. While I went and scrubbed my kit and put it back on dripping wet and came out in Kroonstad in the middle of winter
You're not
with
freezing.
dripping wet kit on to a very angry fellow intake who had now we're going to take it out on this Englishman. They had one problem though, because 6 months in the bush, I arrived in the military. I was the fit guy in my intake. I was hard. I was actually quite fit and tough. So they didn't succeed because I stood up for myself. I come from the south of Joburg. I would give it a go.
Yeah.
So I survived all that shit. And anyway, it was good. I loved the military. I had a great time. I mean, the basics for me was a dream. Everybody else thought it was tough. I thought I was in heaven. I had a hot shower every day. Wow. I had a bed to sleep on. Nothing was trying to eat me. I've got 3 squares a day. And every hour they gave us time off for a smoke break. I didn't even smoke. I started to smoke because I kept getting smoke breaks.
Wow. Yeah.
It was bizarre. I mean, everyone got upset because we had to run everywhere, and I was fit, so I enjoyed running everywhere. Yeah, I've been
I
fit.
noticed, so many of my year group that got into the military and they stayed in. I was G4K4 and then I was G5K5, which meant I was medically unfit because of my accident. I got run over by a drunken driver. And then they wanted me to cut grass with nail clippers and stuff, and I was like, I'm not playing that game. Yeah, so I managed to get myself out. But all of my compatriots that were in there, and that they stayed there for a while, they're all the ones that are fit now. They're all the ones that run and do kind of, the CrossFit and do, it just seems such a useful thing to do to your younger community. Give them the knowledge of how to make themselves fit.
It's one of the reasons why I repeatedly state, if you want to fix this country, bring a conscript. Doesn't have to be military, a civil defense mechanism like they're doing in Brazil. You come out of school in Brazil, you go into the civil defense for a year. It's not military, but it's 1 year to the state, where the state own you. You do what they tell you for a year, and you learn discipline. You get fit. You do all that stuff. And if you did that here, a lot of these. I'll try and be nice now. Some of the softer version of our compatriots around us would panic, but you will fix this country inside of 1 generation.
Yeah. Yeah, and yeah, this has been so formative in your life as well because were you running at school? Were you always very active at school, or did you just come
Yeah.
into that in the bush and then afterwards in the military? Could you tell us a little bit about your running career? You've just had such an amazing running career.
It because I did the camps, the military camps and so on for 10 years.
Hmm.
I I had been very fit and was fit, but I hadn't run. But I started to bump in on the various camps, more and more of my mates over the years, because we were the same 150 guys
Yeah.
that would arrive at the camps every year. So, and more of them are starting to get into running. And I came out of the one camp and I went back. I was working in Kroonstad and in the Orange Free State. And I went back and I thought I'm going to start this running thing. So I went out for a run, and as luck had it, I went out and I went down the road maybe 2 kilometers, and I turned around to come back. And over the hill towards me came this bunch of club runners
Okay.
and
'Cause that
cruising
was
over.
that wasn't something that back then that wasn't something that was common, was it?
No, it was around. Okay, but anyway, this bunch of 10 or 12 guys came towards me, and when they got level with me, they all stopped and spoke to me and wanted to know who I was. They didn't know me.
Yeah.
And of course, in a small town, everyone kind of knows everyone. And I explained I'd just been out for a run and I was on my way back. And they said, no, mate, turn around and come with us. And I said, no, I've got no water, nothing. I'm not, I'm not a runner. I mean, and they said, come, we'll look after you. Anyway, we ran that day, I think 10 kilometers, my first run out. And they started talking to me about this thing called comrades, which I'd heard.
Comrades, yeah.
And they convinced me to run comrades that year. So I started to train with these guys. And
Let's tell
comrades is about a
everyone what
90
comrade.
kilometer,
Yeah,
90 kilometer, 55-mile run. So I thought, yeah, it sounds like a cool idea. So, and they said, you need to run a marathon to qualify to run this thing. And I didn't know what a marathon was. So I thought that sounded like a cool idea. So I trained with them. I went and ran my first marathon, which at the time I thought was pretty slow. I ran a 3:20, which by today's standards is quite quick. But back in the day, wasn't that quick. Anyway, I ran that first Comrades that year and finished it in 8 hours and 10 minutes or something.
So
And
you'd been running for literally less than a year, and you did a
probably 6 months.
comrades.
Yeah.
Wow. Yeah.
Yeah. And but I mean, I've never trained as much as those first 6 months in the rest of my life. I've never run that kind of volume.
Yeah.
But I then ran that race for the next 21 years. I ran Comrades for the next 21 years, and along the way, ran. We got to a stage. I know this is going to sound ridiculous, but we got to a stage where we treated Comrades as a training run for the second half of the year when we would run what we called the exotics. So the long races. So the 90-kilometer race was a training run for the long races later in the year. And
what's the longest race you've run?
the longest fast race was 100 miles.
Wow.
But I've run 140 kilometers across Reunion. I've run some quite long runs. I've run down the Amazon 7 days twice. I've run some I run in Canada. I've run all sorts of places, but the 100-mile race was very special because it's run on the full moon in July, and you run over 3 mountain passes, and it's just a very special run, that one.
And that's something that stayed with you for your whole life, and then you come back to it now. And I remember when we first met, you were a little bit not depressed, but you were a bit down because you weren't running as much as you could because of your aches and pains and things. And we'll come back to that in a bit. So let's transition now. From you've gone into the military. You've then come in. You've worked. You said 10 years worth just going around the bush. Did you go back to work for the same guy again?
So I did a range of things. I worked when I came out of the army. I didn't go back to that guy. I went to work for a company called Union Carbide. Union Carbide, which then had the Bhopal in India incident, which was a very messy chemical accident. So that corporation got itself into trouble. I left them, worked on a big project with them down in Beaufort West. We had a test mine in Beaufort West, and which was fascinating, by the way, because that's when I got to discover paleontology, because we were working in the sediments and we were looking for uranium in the same sedimentary layer as dinosaur bones were being picked up. So we were working with guys and drinking in the pub afterwards. Those guys who were literally hauling out dinosaur bones, which blew me away. I mean, it's just beautiful.
Awesome. Yeah.
But anyway, we cut through all of that. I did a number of things. I ended up running as a senior site surveyor for Shell, Royal Dutch Shell. Back in Kroonstad, I kept going back to Kroonstad for some reason. But that came one of the watershed points because a little lady called Maggie Thatcher came into power here in the UK, and they imposed sanctions on us in South Africa.
Yeah.
And they were pretty severe at the time, which actually pretty much decimated our mining exploration for coal. We were looking for coal. So we closed that entire division down. But because I was a young, quite seen as quite a high flyer in the department I was in, they pulled me out into a fast track management program, moved me to head office, and I became an internal auditor. So I had to put a collar and tie on. I ended up in a head office, and I then got sent out doing internal audit on oil and petrochemical and chemical depots and things, which was fascinating, but actually taught me another lesson about principles. Because I uncovered a pretty nasty incident in one of the audits where we had a number of people dead because of a mistake that the company had made. And I diligently recorded it all. And I reported it back at the head office, and I got called up all the way up to almost to God himself, the financial director. I've never been in someone that senior's office. And I was summoned to his office, and the message was, bring all your working papers with you. And I got there and I sent it all out. And I thought, my report is finally going to make big time here. And he said, is that everything? I said, yep. And he said, all your working papers there? I said, yep. He said, right, you can leave. But before you go, I want you to remember what you signed when you joined this company. Because if you ever repeat this story, I'll kill you. Not literally, but I will take you out. You will never work again.
Yeah.
And I was like, really? Are you really just going to squash this thing? And he was, squash what? The subject's over. Get out. And I thought, I can't do this. And so I resigned. I'm gone. I left. And I left a number of companies along my career for that same reason, And I'll come back to it over and over. It's something I will tell anyone, any youngster coming into whatever they want to do today. Never, ever shortchange your principles and values.
Amazing, yeah.
Put them down and stick with them.
So then you transitioned onto a different role. You started working with the banks, and then we'll fast forward a little bit and come to there's a whole that's what I love about you working with you is you've got 40 odd years worth of different stories, which is always fun to hear. So later on, you get to the banks. You start traveling. You start CTO wise putting projects
I'll give
in.
you a synopsis very fast. I mean, I worked in South Africa for Nedbank and ABSA, did some large projects with them. I then went up into the UK. I then joined an American software vendor and became their main delivery manager in South Africa, and transitioned to the UK with them and took over Europe, Middle East, Africa regional director role. I then moved to, again, had a problem later on with some principles and issues. And I learned a lesson there, which is if you're going to write an email to your line manager when you're sitting at 38,000 feet and full of port and hit the send button, and then forget about it. And when you get to your hotel and log on to the Wi-Fi and your outbox clears and you can't even remember the email, that's not a good move. Not a good move. Anyway, I moved from that company and I worked for a crowd called Transaction Network Services, which was fascinating. Really interesting company. But then I moved to Link, which became VocaLink, central ATM switch for the entire UK.
So just give us a little bit of details about what these companies were doing and why it was fascinating.
Well, Transaction Network Services, we were running all of the point of sale transactions dial up in the day. So we were carrying significant volume. I will never forget, we had in the main head office, we had a big screen, and on the screen was a number. And that number, the extreme right-hand digit, just was a blur. And I said to the CEO, what is that number? And he said, that is the number of transactions running across my network. And I said to him, why is that significant? And he said, because I make 0.8 of a P on every transaction. And this thing was just, and it's like a cash register, just 24/7, just going. It was, so the software I was in was real-time transaction processing, which is 24/7. I became, for TNS, I got, again, a little bit by accident, but that CEO kind of liked me. I went in as a project manager on a little thing. I ended up taking over the entire bureau because the guy who was running the bureau actually crashed it. And when they did an investigation, I said to the guys, "Why have you got cowboys running this lot?" And he said to me, "That's quite a statement. Explain yourself." And when I did, he said, "Right, you're running the shop from now." Okay. So that went well. And then we ended up trying to do a joint venture. I was program director for a joint venture with Link, and we were moving our independent ADMs to Link, who also ran some independent merchant-owned ADMs. And we were putting the two together. And I was program directing it because I was going to take that company over. So I backfilled myself, made sure that the continuity was there. And then 5 days before we were due to sign, the competitions board threw us out because they said we were creating monopoly.
Wow.
But I couldn't go backwards because I had backfilled myself. So suddenly I was out of a job. So John Hardy, who ran Link at the time, I approached him and said, do you have any work for me? You know exactly who I am. You were prepared to make me head of this thing. And he said, "Hell yeah, come in here." And we have another new venture. We were trying to create at the time a white label ATM because it became non-commercially viable to have every high street bank having its own ATM on the high street. So we came up with a Canadian concept, which was an ATM would be whatever card you stuck into it. The issuing bank that had issued that card is the bank that would actually suddenly own the screen in front of you. So you were now dealing with your bank's ATM. And the ATM could transcend depending on what card got put into it, which is a fascinating concept. Anyway, that ran. I had signed on with him permanent staff. I'd started with him as a contractor, signed on permanent. And that afternoon, that was in Harrogate, I was driving home and I got a call from a headhunter to go to Saudi Arabia, Kingdom of Saudi Arabia, to head up a very large program, which was to completely transform the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia and introduce chip and pin. And when I went back to John Hardy at Link and I said, "This is the offer I've been made." Bless his heart, his response at the time was, "Son, you have to go."
Yeah, yeah, yeah. And you always have so much respect for people that do that. And
Yeah.
I had an engineer once, Ben, and I'd been working with him, and I pushed him all the way forward, and he was doing really, really well. And he came up to me and he's like, "Roy, I need to talk to you." And just in that tone that you know he's going to resign, right? There's just something about that tone. And
You
he
know,
comes to me and he's like, "I've been approached by Formula One, Mercedes Benz, and yeah, they've got a job for me being the on-site engineer at all the races." Ben, go, go, go! Yeah, yeah. What an opportunity to see the world and just be in amazing places. So yeah, it's just it's
yeah.
awesome that he did that. Yeah.
So, so Saudi Arabia was a scary. Yeah. Uh, it was fascinating, but it was a really good education in terms of many things. I mean, there's you could do an entire podcast on that program alone, to be honest. But cut forward a long story, we had a very successful program. We changed a failing point of sale system with over 55,000 point of sale. We changed all the ADMs. We changed, but we had to build an in-house certification center first. I worked for the central bank for a guy called Abdul Malik Al Sheikh. If he ever watches this one day, he's going to go, "Yeah, I remember you." Also, a really interesting guy. very interesting. But so we fixed his point of sale. We sorted out the certification center. We changed all the ATMs, and then we had to change all of the issued card base across 22 banks. We did all of that except for one bank. One bank was just a laggard, slow. Anyway, I finished the project. I moved on, and I got a call from Abdul Malik, and he went, Saudi Holland, the last bank. You know, but they're a problem. They've always been a problem. I said, yeah. He said, I need you to go and work for them. I said, how do I even approach him? He said, just call them. They're waiting for your call. I have told them you're coming to fix it. So I went to Saudi Holland. And the interesting thing there, the guy who was COO there, he then went off to Qatar. So a little later, I moved out, finished there, moved out, and approached this chap who is now in Qatar, who was now CEO of this banking group in Qatar. And he said, your timing is excellent. Come on down. I need a head of IT. So off I went to Qatar, to the Bauer Bank Group, to work for Steve. And that was fascinating. And then we've kind of, because when I got there, they put $200 million into a brand new bank, as only the Qataris can do. They wanted to build a bank, so they bought all these things, like stuff off a shelf, you know, and they banged it all together, and they said, we now have a bank. Except it didn't quite work like that, because they had lots of point solutions, but they never had any coherent architecture. So I arrived, and he said, can you fix this for me? So I did, and
Cool. So you've had so much depth in project management and IT and connecting solutions together over the years, and you then came through. You're in the UK working for a potential startup that was going quite well, and that kind of fell off at the last minute, so to speak, and we then got into COVID. So COVID.
if I go forward and we cut right forward to that one, the fintech in London, which there was a common thread all the way through. There was a chap that had got me to work with him in what we called an applied consultancy, and he tended to get parachuted in to problem sites.
Okay.
So he called me up. I was working at TSIS up in York again, and he got hold of me and he said, can you come and help me with this fintech in London? We've got 3 acquisitions. The merger's not been done right. This place is a basket case. I'm going in as CEO. I'd like you to come in as my COO. So I went in as COO to try and resolve because you will know in M&A, the hardest part of M&A is not the A. The acquisitions are easy, but it's the bean counter, but it's a spreadsheet set of accounting. Merging the tech stack, the cultures, getting the operational side to work as a unified whole, that's where the magic sauce is. Anyway, we did that. We got it working. COVID arrived. I moved to a new office. I just set the office up, all the RT in the office, and I'd used the model I'd seen at TSIS, which allowed me so we could hot desk everywhere. We hadn't even actually moved into that new office yet, and COVID, the first lockdown hit. So we were now faced with a production scenario. We ran the Irish Post Office. We ran a number of big customers. We had people closing on us. COVID was a culling ground of note, as you will know. Suppliers died, all sorts of people died.
Yeah.
I had a 70-man IT team, everyone working from home, all remotely, all on Zoom. My IT, by the way, worked seamlessly, but I had a tech stack on 2 different clouds and a bit of on-prem, and we had to get all of that fixed remotely, whilst not dropping any production time. which we achieved. And in that time, we introduced a new card product and so on. But by the time I got to the end of COVID, I was gone. I was finished. So I decided to take a sabbatical. And I did. I took myself back to school. I went and did the non-exec diploma through the Financial Times for 6 months. I found it fascinating, reaffirming my understanding of corporate governance and compliance and risk management and all of that at board level. Got it all great again. It was frustrating again because, again, you're getting to see how it should be done versus you've seen how it is being done. And the two aren't necessarily the same. And then I realized that ageism, you know, my age, no matter the background I've got, people don't want to employ you. And the reason for that, I came to realize actually, is 90% of recruitment is done by young people. And the unintended consequence of that is they don't hire people they deem to be too old.
Wow, yeah.
So, and that's how sad it is. Whenever I read in the papers about the amount of people that, okay, the current situation has changed and all the employment vacancies are dropping away at very high speed as an unintended consequence of Miss Reeves and her lovely budget. However, at the time, there was a lot of work around and I couldn't get any. And I came to a realization very quickly that the unintended consequence, again, of keeping yourself fit all your life and healthy, and getting to this unemployable stage, there's a 30-year problem here. Because I'm going to be alive at least another 30 years and funded how? Because no matter what you think you have in your pension pot, it's not enough.
Yeah.
Just not enough. So I needed to build a survival kit. So I went off and the breathing and the ice exposure, thank you to you guys. I thought this is so fundamental and absolutely resonates. And I will never forget the one comment you made in that first workshop, which stuck with me all the way. If you don't eat, you can last 4 weeks. If you don't drink, you can last 4 days. If you don't breathe, you can last 4 minutes. So why do we put all the focus on diet? And nobody gives a damn about breathing. And yet that should be priority one.
Yeah, for sure.
All of the breathing mechanism is a muscle. You can train it. And yet nobody does. It's madness. Anyway, thank you for teaching me about the breathing in the ice. Wonderful. But I also discovered along the way here something really magical. I found a part-time job, very closely allied to my running, where I became a race director on weekends for an events company. In the most beautiful locations, up in the forests, peak districts, mountains, where I get on a weekend to make several hundred people smile. And I extract a little bit of the positive energy off of every single one of those people as they come over the line.
Yeah. And you told me this weekend past you had a bunch of kids coming through, and that must have been so amazing.
The kids' races are just, I teach sprogs this big. When they come over the line and I put a medal around their neck and I give them a high five and I make the entire crowd clap them in and I give them such a smile and they transform into this little bundle of joy.
Confidence.
I mean, this weekend we have 700 runners up in the Sherwood Forest. It's going to be magical. I mean, by the time I get to a Monday, I am bursting with energy.
Amazing. And then let's transition on, and we've got about 10 minutes, I guess. Let's transition on to we've been friends for what, 2 years, 3 years maybe. Yeah, I don't even remember when you first got in the ice. And we have a morning club that we meet up at my place in the morning. We do some breath work, we do some meditation, we get in the ice, and this whole journey of building out all the power and building out what that looks like has been a real eye opener for me, because you need to refine what you love again, right? I run through IT companies. That's great. I enjoy doing it. I don't have to be that involved in it because I've got a great team behind me. there's a range of things happening there. But then what do I do with my time? And I realized my passion, even though the Wim Hof instructing stuff, the cold exposure, the breath work, all of these things are great and they form a core piece of what we're doing. The next side of that was, well, I love working with business owners. I love teaching business owners, and you you were very, very just at the right time. You said, "Oh, I've just done this Ned thing, and I'm trying to." So I'm like, "Okay, come," and we got into Boss Up, and we got into 90 and this business operating system, psychology, and I gave you that sheet, and I think you sat in it for a couple of weeks before you actually read it.
Yeah. And I have to be honest. I mean, I brought it home. I put it on the table. I didn't look at it. And then I was coming to meet you for an ice bath. And eventually I thought, he's going to ask me. I need to look at that.
Yeah.
So I read it. And when I read it, I thought, wow. I read it again.
Yeah.
And I thought, this just resonates, man. This absolutely encapsulates so much of what I've seen in the last 40 years. It's so fundamental. And I would go so far as to say a business operating system is as fundamental as the technical engine that runs your company. The two are equally important. You can have the best IT in the world, and I have seen companies with brilliant IT that fail because the business operating system gets derailed by an ego, and I've seen private equity egos kill companies. I have seen execs that think KPIs are for the people down there, they're not for us. At the exco level, we don't need those things. Fatal, you know. And I've seen the opposite. I've seen companies that embrace it, where from the chairman, never mind the CEO, from the chairman down, the company is one great cohesive strategic unit.
Yeah.
And when that works, it is unbelievable the power, because every single person in that company knows why they're there, what they're doing, what its purpose is. There is no wasted energy. There is no discussion about rubbish. There is no politicking, because politicking comes from confusion. And whenever people tell me their company is rife with politics, it is a pure, straightaway red flag as to these guys don't have a plan. People are bored and they're
Yeah.
confused.
And that's where all the power was born. We both have this wellness piece. We both understand the power of mental health and the power of being you with your running, me with my Wim Hof and cold exposure and breath work, and and but that's one piece. And then we've looked very much into the AI, and the way that the AI can really get things together and save time and be more efficient. And then applying the boss up, so the business operating system above it, it just means that this triangle, this pyramid is so powerful, and it's been so awesome to build through and get to a point where we are now.
I mean, that triumvirate, what you call the Elevate 360, that 360 view, bringing your health, and being able to embrace and not be terrified of what's coming, the new stuff, and coupling that to sound business logic. And the fascinating thing, I battled a little at first, trying to get my own head around how I could bring my background to the small business guy. And then it didn't take too long listening to some of your guys on some of the webinars I've been on. It hit me in the face, fair and square. None of the issues and problems that I have seen are any different at a big scale to a little scale. They're the same issues, exactly the same issues. So I think I can add a wealth of experience to our business community, because I have a cupboard full of t-shirts in how not to do stuff. And I can reinforce the stuff that we have in the Boss Up material, because I probably have 15 anecdotes for every one of their points of how to do it right and how to do it wrong.
And
And
that's, yeah, for me that's so powerful. That point of, yeah, you can go to university, you can go to school, you can go and do whatever, yeah, you want to, but you learn from experience. Yeah, and yeah, so many of the people that we're working with, it's okay. We're going to go through now, and we're going to go through these steps, and at every step you're going to have some lessons, and you're going to fail some stuff, and that's okay. That's your learning. But so long as you're prepared properly to fail in the right way, you can take that and you can, not lose a bunch of money on it and not spend, £100,000 on advertising and get it wrong. You can just take these small steps, and by the time you get out the other side of that process, you actually understand why the stuff works, which is, so key.
I think one of the most fascinating things for me in this journey that we've been down together and will continue to go down together, you unlocked for me and you took away the myth of AI,
Mm.
because I'm a dinosaur. People like me are going to be terrified of AI. I can tell you that now,
Yeah.
because you look at it and you think, wow, I don't even begin to understand that stuff. And yet when you begin to work with it and you realize that actually this thing is it's actually easy to work with.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's dangerous. But it's only dangerous if you, I think if you go about it incorrectly and you just start to believe everything out there. And I think, people are working with AI a whole lot of the time anyway, and they're just not aware of it.
Yeah. And
And
that's, your Siris and your Alexas and your, all of these things. And it's this, yeah, what we're trying to do with that side of it is to really get people to understand, if you're going to look at security. I mean, you've done a lot of work in security place, right? If you're going to look at security, there's no point in your people sitting in the office talking about clients' details, even in your office, because every single laptop, for example, has the mics turned on to listen on Google, and we don't even
yeah,
realize that. And your mobiles, all the devices that actually are quietly listening. There's so much out there. There's a sea change that needs to happen at the training and understanding level. Yeah, if we really are going to address the security issues, and if you are high security or you're HIPAA or you're any of these things, there's the staff need to know how to act. And then once they know how to act, no matter what tools they're using, can be so much more efficient for them, and so it can give them so much more. And I just see as we go through this journey, I see so many people, stepping back from the AI and saying, "I don't want this, I don't want that, I don't want this," and but it brings me back to this idea that if you take man as evolving a long timeline and you put him next to the other animals in the world, we're actually only something like 25% efficient as man, right? The condor, like just in our own bodies, the condor is the most efficient creature out there, because it's up at the top level of efficiency, because it floats and it uses the currents and it does. But you take a man and you put a man onto a bicycle, and suddenly he's 3 times more efficient than a condor, right? And to me, this AI tool piece is taking your brain and putting it on a bicycle.
yeah,
It's opened up the amount that I can think. It's opened up the amount I can do. It's like, we talk about having like a chips in our heads and stuff where you're actually able to get all the information. You don't need that. You have all the information. You just need to know a little bit about, the subject. You don't even need to know about the subject. You can just say, listen, ChatGPT, I don't know about this subject. Can you tell me about it? What do I need to know in order to use this for this problem? Yeah, and this is just entirely changing. Yeah, in the next 12 months, it's going to change everybody's world. Yeah, and we can see it, and we can see it clearly, and that's where we're positioning ourselves, right?
and I believe we have a huge amount to offer in terms of these communities we're working with and talking to, in that it doesn't matter from which angle we're coming at, whether it's from your health, your mental health, your optimized breathing efficiency, which is going to fix your immune system and make you a better person
Yeah.
and calmer and less stressed,
Mm.
teaching you how to actually work with AI, and instead of trying to buy a book on prompts, learning how to actually create prompts. I mean, that's powerful in itself. And every one of the people that we're starting to talk to who are trying to start up little businesses, we have a way to actually make those little businesses really come together quite quickly.
Yeah.
And people don't have to go through the pain. They can come and listen, and we'll teach them. And I think we're all going to benefit out of it. But it's a
And
great
you've really seen, like you were just saying previously about how different different sizes of companies have the same problems. I've really looked at small business. My businesses are 3, 4, 5 million. And then I've built I think 20 businesses. I've started 20 odd businesses in the last 20 years. Yeah, a lot of them have fallen by the wayside. Some of them have worked quite well. And you've worked on the high end stuff. You've worked on way up there with multi billion pound companies. So yeah, it's good to have that knowledge from both sides and to be able to draw on that. And yeah, as we go forward into this AI generation, it's I'm super excited to see where it goes. So
Yeah, I would agree with that. I mean, I think the one real message we need to put to people, and I know you really do believe it, and you live it. It's about the balance. You know, live your life to the full. Uh,
yeah,
do the extreme sports. I've chased extreme sports. You've chased them. You you can do things physically that you will not even begin to believe is possible until you attempt them, and then you'll think that wasn't that complicated.
yeah, yeah,
I mean, your body's an incredible machine. So is your mind. And we are capable of so much if we go about it. But there is no reason to be one-dimensional in your life. And I think that is the biggest message: is attack anything, do anything. You are your own greatest limitation. But balance. I mean, way back we had I was chairman of a very large running company, running club, a very long time ago, and in another life, and we ran ultras because our motto was we were a drinking club with a running problem. So we figured that in order to balance out the amount we drank, we needed to run extra far. So we ran ultras because we like to drink hard, which I'm not suggesting that is a way for people to go forward, but it's whatever you do in life, find a balancing mechanism
yeah,
and then just get out and do it and lose the stress along the way. Find ways to embrace and deal with people who are positive. I mean, your message on ICP made me think. One of the other things I started as part of my survival kit was
yeah,
I built a little thing which you've come across me doing, which I call my DIY craftsmith, my little handyman operation. And my ICP on that is wealthy pensioners who live in beautiful big properties, who are literally, they can afford it, but they can't do anymore the things they want to do, but they want their places to look lovely. So they look for old guys like me who come along and go, hey, I'm a trustworthy guy, I can fix that for you. And they pay a premium for it.
I need to jump in here because you're totally selling yourself short, right? Your achievements here. Yeah, I remember a little while ago, Simon's been jumping in and out of doing, this, what he says is, little DIY thing. Yeah, you came in one that morning and you're like, okay, I've scratched my arm here. And I was like, what do you mean you scratched your arm? Well, here's the thing. Yeah, I put all these 70-kilo railway sleepers down on this bed for this client, and I'm like, okay, yeah, and yeah, we had floods, and the floods all went, yeah, and took all the railway sleepers away. So you had to go and pick them up, you know, from the bottom of a ditch somewhere, and nearly killed yourself getting the railway sleepers together. Yeah, you're 68 years old and you're doing this stuff out in the cold, and yeah, your wellness has really, really enabled you to live your life properly, huh?
So I discovered a functional gym. You
Yeah.
know, that is my functional gym, and I get paid to do it. However, working with all the power is a lot easier on the joints. I have to be honest.
And we get to do ice bath every day anyway, so
And we
that
get to
really
do ice
helps.
baths.
Yeah, yeah.
And we get to do Wim Hof breathing, and we get to do Dr. Joe meditation, and what more can I say?
So thank you very much for your time, Simon. Really have appreciated having you on. Is there any last kind of wisdom that you want to, yeah, really, yeah, tell the people before we sign off?
I'll leave you with one comment. Growing old is inevitable. Being old is a choice.
Very well said, sir. Very well said. Thank you very much for your time.
Thanks, Ray. Talk soon, buddy.
Thank you for tuning into Power Movers. I'd love to hear your thoughts, questions, or ideas for future episodes. Feel free to connect with me on LinkedIn, Facebook, or Instagram, or drop me an email at roy@allthepower.co.uk. I'd love to hear from you. Remember, the content in this podcast is for informational purposes only. Always consult a qualified coach or professional before making significant decisions. Until next time, keep moving forward, stay inspired, and live the life you love. Thanks for listening.